more, let's bring in environmental justice advocate Kari Fulton. Kari, great to have you on the show. Of course, we're facing more and more extreme weather conditions, here in the US like everywhere else in the world. What are the biggest concerns in terms of infrastructure when it comes to extreme weather like this?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And there's so much to think about when it comes to infrastructure. And one of the big pieces is that the way that the weather is changing so drastically, and we're seeing more extreme winters, even more extreme heat, our infrastructure is not built and designed to take care of that, especially in cities that are not used to having extreme winters like what we've been seeing. So we see a lot of issues when it comes to places like Tennessee, where you had multiple deaths due to things like hypothermia and even frozen roadways, to other places where it's also an issue of equity, where everyone doesn't have the same access to warming shelters or even the ability to deal with freezing pipes and pipe insulation.
States like California and New York pride themselves on their abundance of renewable power. How do renewables hold up in extreme weather events like this? Can it often support cities to push through these kinds of moments?
Absolutely. And that's what we saw in Texas. A lot of times people wanted to blame the previous winter storm that happened in Texas on wind turbines that froze, but actually it was frozen natural gas plants. And so a lot of times we look at natural gas as kind of a transition fuel in between the coal and the oil that we're used to. But really, in a lot of ways, we've seen that that has not actually worked as well as having stronger investment and backing into those renewables like wind and solar, especially community solar, that is not based off of a huge grid, but really has more space to be spread out.
Now, the Biden-Harris administration has allocated $1.28 billion for Tennessee infrastructure improvements. Now, that's a state that's typically Republican and it's currently frozen from the blizzards that it's just seen. What does money like that mean for a state like that in terms of its infrastructure?
Oh, it means so much. And it means so much when people see beyond the politics to see that infrastructure is something that we need and that has to be invested in order for the success of our economy and our country. And oftentimes when we talk about the funding, the billions of dollars, trillions really, that are going into addressing things like infrastructure here in the United States that the Biden administration has really led, one of the pieces of it is that the overall benefits of that are supposed to go to disadvantaged communities. And what that means is so critical because oftentimes in Republican leaning counties, it doesn't always get to the people who need it the most. So we have to have a lot of oversight to make sure that that's equally spread out and the people who need it the most actually get what they need.
How would you say that infrastructure policy is divided or seen differently along party lines? Often in an election year, people talk a lot about the economy. Are they referring mostly to their own back pockets, or is it also from a community point of view? And how do both sides of the aisle target communities in terms of what they prioritise and how they rebuild infrastructure?
I think that's a great question. One of the main key pieces that oftentimes happens is that a more conservative base may focus more on building roadways and building infrastructure that leads people into the suburbs and also into urban sprawl. Whereas a lot of times more of the Democrats may focus on public transit and also on supporting some of the more internal urban areas in a different way and building walkable cities. Now, that doesn't mean that either side is good or bad because there's an even place because we all live here in America in different areas. There's also the reality that sometimes people on the more conservative leaning side can see it as some sort of social good or a charity to do infrastructure and may focus on more privatized visions of what that looks like. But what we really need are government solutions that support everyone.
Really interesting to get your insight. Kari Fulton, thank you for your time.